there's one thing I know about my city, it's that the traffic is always a mess by 7:30, but that morning the streets were weirdly quiet. No honking, no morning radio, not even the neighbor's yappy dog losing its mind at the mailman. Just silence, and a cold feeling that started somewhere in my gut and worked its way up. I almost didn't leave my apartment, not because of fear, but because of this deep, nagging sense that I was forgetting something. I did all the usual things, brushed my teeth, poured stale coffee, checked my phone. Mom had texted something about Dad's gout flaring up and how I should call my grandma, but I didn't answer. I was late, and my brain felt fuzzy, like I hadn't slept right. Even the apartment smelled different, like metal or wet pennies. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard coughing from Mrs. Davis's apartment. She's lived across from me since I was a kid, always gives out those awful butterscotch candies on Halloween and never once coughed like that before. Hacking, raw, almost animal. I paused at her door. Usually I'd knock and check in, but I didn't. I told myself I was running late, but honestly it felt like something told me not to get involved. Outside, a military van was parked on the curb, engine idling. That never happens here. We're not the kind of neighborhood that sees camo up close. Two soldiers leaned against the hood, smoking. Their faces looked tight, stressed, eyes flicking around like they were waiting for someone or something. I caught a glimpse of what looked like blood on the side mirror. I convinced myself it was rust. I think we all do that at first. Try to normalize things so we don't freak out. I grabbed my car keys and headed to my Civic. I noticed a dark smear on the windshield. Not bird crap, but something thicker, smeared from the wiper blades. I stared at it for a long second, then just got in and turned the ignition. I didn't want to know. Driving to work was the last normal thing I tried to do. The radio only played static, and when it did cut in, it was weird. Please remain indoors. Over and over, mixed with beeping and voices that sounded scared. I switched it off and tried calling my best friend, Mike. Voicemail. Then my sister. Then my mom again. Nothing. My phone's bars dropped from 4 to 0, then flickered back up. My office building looked the same as always, but the lobby was empty. Normally the security guy, Steve, gives me hell for bringing in coffee, but he was gone. No one at the desk. The elevator doors opened on their own, so I took the stairs instead. I could hear someone up on the 3rd floor crying. Not quietly, but loud, gulping sobs that echoed down the stairwell. I moved faster. When I got to my floor, I found Jess from HR standing by the window, just staring. She didn't even look at me when I said hi. Her hands were shaking, white-knuckled tight on her phone. She was trying to call someone, I think, but just pressing the screen over and over, like it might change something if she kept trying. I made it to my desk and sat down. The office was cold. My computer wouldn't connect to the internet, emails wouldn't load, and my phone had no service. For the next hour, I watched the world slow down. People walked around looking lost. Some just stood by the windows. Someone started crying again. The whole building felt wrong, like a waiting room for bad news. That's when I saw it for the first time. Out the window, a man walking up the middle of the street, shirt torn, one shoe missing, stumbling. I thought maybe he was drunk, but he moved like something was broken inside him. He turned his head and I saw his face smeared with blood. Not hurt, just blood all over his mouth and chin. He stopped and stared up at our windows, and for a second, I swear, his eyes met mine. I couldn't move. Then, behind him, another person, and another. Same walk. Same look. No screaming, just shuffling, like they'd forgotten how to be human. Someone in the office gasped. Jess dropped her phone. People started backing away from the windows. A woman from accounting locked herself in the bathroom. The rest of us just stood there, frozen, like if we kept still, we'd be safe. I made a choice then. I grabbed my bag, ran to the supply closet, and started grabbing anything I thought I might need. Duct tape, water bottles, snacks. I didn't know what I was prepping for, but every bone in my body said stay inside. The building's PA crackled, and for the first time in my life I heard our boss, Mr. Taylor, who always joked about fire drills, sound scared. "Everyone please remain indoors. This is not a drill. Stay away from the windows. Lock the doors." My hands shook as I jammed the door shut with a chair. I texted everyone I knew, "Are you okay?" No one answered. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I was right to be scared. It wasn't panic yet, just dread, heavy and cold, and a feeling that the world outside was already gone, even if we hadn't admitted it yet. I pressed my back against the door and listened to my own breathing, wishing I could hear anything else. It was only the beginning. Didn't sleep that night. I tried, I swear, but every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was that guy in the street. The blood, the stare, the way he moved. I kept expecting to hear police sirens, or maybe helicopters, or even some kind of National Guard thing, but there was nothing. Just the wind outside, and now and then a single distant scream. Sometimes I thought I could hear banging, far off at first, then closer, like someone was pounding on doors somewhere in the building. My phone finally buzzed at 2:23 a.m. A single text: "Stay in your office, lock everything, don't trust anyone." No name, just a number I didn't recognize. I showed it to Jess, who was curled up on the carpet in my office with her knees to her chest. She just shook her head and closed her eyes again. The crying from the bathrooms hadn't stopped. Every so often someone would come out, stare at us like we were strangers, then disappear back into their own little bunker. By dawn, there were less of us. Not everyone was still in their offices. At some point, Steve from security came back. His uniform was torn, face scraped, and his eyes were wild, like he'd seen hell. He said nothing, just checked that the doors were locked, and then vanished down the hall. I never saw him again. At 9 a.m., the fire alarm started blaring. I froze, heart racing. The last time we had a drill, everyone was annoyed and just filed down the stairs. This time, nobody moved. We all knew, in that way people know something terrible is about to happen, that whatever was waiting outside was way worse than fire. Mike texted. Finally, all it said was, "I can see them. They're inside my building." I tried to call him, but nothing went through. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I stared at the last text for what felt like hours. The sound came first, not gunshots, banging, thumping, and then a crash. Down the hallway, the glass doors to the stairwell exploded. I saw two people come stumbling in. Their faces, I can't even explain it. I knew one of them, Laura from accounting, who'd always brought those sad little salads for lunch. She wasn't screaming, she was just eating, biting into the shoulder of the guy next to her, blood pouring down. He tried to push her off, but she wouldn't stop. Someone screamed, and that's when everything broke. People ran. People locked themselves in rooms, ducked under desks. Some even jumped out the window into the shrubs below. Jess grabbed my arm and pulled me back as Laura and the other guy started coming down our row of offices. She was making this noise. A growl. Not human, not even animal. The kind of sound that makes you want to crawl out of your own skin. I grabbed a heavy 3-hole punch and stood between Jess and the door. I didn't want to use it, but what choice did I have? Laura slammed her hands against the glass. The blood smeared everywhere. Her eyes, they were dead but focused, like she knew us, like she wanted us. The guy with her collapsed, blood pouring from his neck. She dropped to her knees and started eating. I almost threw up. Jess was shaking so bad she could barely breathe. I dragged her into the supply closet, slammed the door, and braced it with a metal chair. We could still hear the sounds, biting, chewing, then something wet sliding against the floor. Laura's body, probably, or someone else's. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I just kept thinking about how this couldn't be real. But it was. After a while, it got quiet. The alarms went dead. Only sound left was our breathing and Jess softly whispering, "It's not real. It's not real." I checked my phone again. Still nothing from anyone I cared about. I started to cry, just a little, because the world outside, the city, my friends, my parents, felt 1,000,000 miles away, like they'd already died and no one told me yet. After what felt like hours, I finally worked up the nerve to peek through the crack in the door. Laura was gone. So was the other guy. The hallway was covered in blood, papers everywhere, a trail of red heading toward the fire stairs. That's when it hit me. The office wasn't safe. Nowhere was safe. I couldn't just hide and hope things would get better. Jess wanted to stay, but I knew we had to move. The infected were inside, in the building. It was only a matter of time before there were more. I grabbed what I could: water, a fire extinguisher, my phone, anything that might help. I put my arm around Jess and we crept out, hearts in our throats, trying not to make a sound. We made it to the stairs. The door was open, busted off the hinges. The air stank of copper and sweat. We heard voices from below, screaming, then that wet, hungry sound. I looked at Jess, and we just started running. Down 3 flights, out the service exit, into the back alley behind the building. Outside, the world didn't look the same. The sky was gray, heavy with smoke. Car alarms were blaring. A woman ran past us, blood pouring from her face, screaming for her kid. Down the street, 2 more people shuffled, jerking with every step, skin pale and eyes blank. I didn't wait to see if they noticed us. I just kept moving, dragging Jess along. It wasn't infection anymore. It was something else. The city was changing, and if we didn't change too, we weren't going to make it. Running wasn't as simple as just moving your legs. Every time I glanced back, I expected to see those dead eyes, that broken, hungry way of moving. But the street was full of confusion. People running, people fighting, some just standing and staring like the world had glitched out. Sirens in the distance, or maybe just alarms. My phone vibrated, and for a second I hoped it was my mom or Mike. It was an emergency alert. Stay indoors. Citywide lockdown. Do not approach infected. Help is coming. It was a lie. There was no help. We ducked into a convenience store. The bell above the door rang like nothing was wrong, and for half a second I thought I'd see the old guy behind the counter, the one who always called me boss. Instead, there was a kid, maybe 17, holding a baseball bat, wild-eyed and shaking. He pointed it at us, yelling, "Stay back! I mean it!" Jess and I threw up our hands. "We're not sick," I said. "We just need water." The kid didn't lower the bat, but he didn't swing either. I started grabbing bottles, jerky, anything with calories, and dumped it into my backpack. The kid watched us, breathing heavy, like a cornered animal. Jess reached for a bag of chips and he flinched, eyes going glassy with fear. That's when we heard the pounding at the door. 2 people, faces bloody, eyes empty. They smashed their hands against the glass, faster and faster, not stopping even when their skins split open. Jess dropped the chips. The kid screamed, "Get in the back!" We ran through the storeroom to a metal door that led out into an alley. I shoved Jess through first, then turned to see the kid, still holding the bat, mouth open in terror as the door gave way. I wanted to help him, but the look on his face, I knew he was already gone. I slammed the door shut behind us and braced it with a trash bin, hearing the sounds of breaking glass and screaming from inside. I'll never know if he made it. I doubt it. The alley was chaos. A car had crashed into a dumpster, the engine still running. There was blood on the windshield. The city sounded like it was dying. Sirens, gunshots, screams. the kind of noise you can't ever forget. We followed the alley to the next street. Every shadow felt dangerous, every stranger a possible monster. At the next corner we saw a group of people, normal people, or at least not bleeding, trying to barricade themselves inside a laundromat. We ran over, but a woman with a baseball cap shoved a gun at us, telling us to back off. "No room, no more, you could be infected," she shouted, voice breaking. Jess started crying, begging her to let us in. The woman didn't budge. I looked at Jess, at the shaking in her shoulders, and realized this was the moment. This was where I had to decide. Force our way in, risk it all, or walk away and hope we found somewhere else. I didn't try to break in. I turned Jess away. She called me a coward under her breath, but I kept walking. My stomach twisted with guilt. Maybe I was a coward. Maybe I just wanted to survive more than anything else. We wandered, lost. The city didn't feel like home. Every building that should have been safe. The deli where I'd eaten 1,000 sandwiches. The movie theater where I'd had my first kiss. Was just another place someone could be hiding or dying. The rules had changed. All that mattered now was surviving. I saw things that burned into my memory. A family huddled together, all of them infected but clinging to each other as the sickness took over. A man with a gun in his mouth, shaking, deciding if he'd rather be dead than whatever came next. I couldn't watch. I just kept moving. We finally found a small apartment complex with a door still locked. I smashed the intercom until someone answered, a tired, wary voice. I begged, pleaded, told them we weren't sick. After a long pause, the lock buzzed open. We hurried inside. The place was already half abandoned. The woman who let us in looked like she hadn't slept in days. She pointed at a closet and told us to stay there, not to make noise, not to trust anyone. Jess was falling apart. I tried to comfort her, but the words felt fake. There was nothing I could promise, not anymore. It wasn't long before the building was attacked. Maybe someone saw us go in, maybe someone inside turned. Doesn't matter, I heard the screams, the smashing, the gunshots. We tried to run, but in the chaos, Jess slipped and fell. I tried to help her, but someone, a stranger, maybe a neighbor, shoved me out the door and slammed it behind me. Jess screamed my name as I pounded on the wood. I could hear her begging, crying. I lied. I told her I'd come back. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. I ran. I didn't look back. I don't know what happened to Jess. Maybe she made it, maybe not. I was bleeding from my arm where the door caught me, but I barely felt it. I limped away, broken, alone, and different. I wasn't the same person who went to work yesterday. The city was gone. My friends were gone. I was just surviving. As the sun started to rise, I found myself on the edge of the city, where the buildings thinned out and the roads stretched empty into the unknown. I kept walking, not because I had hope, but because I didn't have anything else. The rules of life had changed, and so had I. Whatever was waiting out there, I wasn't the same person anymore. I was someone new, someone who survived,